In 1995, a man called Babani Sissoko walked into this bank in Dubai and proceeded to remove its money on an epic scale.
There was a massive fraud committed against Dubai Islamic Bank. The people who owned the bank took a huge, huge hit. It was not covered by insurance.
Sissoko pulled off one of the most audacious confidence tricks of all time. He stole $242 million by convincing people he was using black magic.
This black magic stuff I hear, I couldn't believe it.
The story that we were told was that it was a result of some type of hypnosis.
Sissoko also created a myth that he stole from the rich to give to the poor.
He would go on Thursdays, they would drive him around, he would find homeless people and give them money to.
Sissoko flashed money like nobody else.
No client had ever given me even a bicycle as a bonus for getting them out of jail, let alone a brand new Mercedes-Benz.
Sissoko's powers of deception were almost superhuman.
I've heard that he was dangerous.
What he did is remarkable. But he ruined a lot of people along the way.
Sissoko has been in hiding ever since. We have gone in search of the man who masterminded the biggest theft you've never heard of. An embarrassment the bank tried desperately to cover up. Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, a city legendary for its opportunities and its opportunists. The Dubai Islamic Bank opened here in 1975. It's the world's first bank run on Islamic principles. A bank that 20 years later was almost brought to its knees by a bizarre scandal. My name is Brigitte Scheffer. In 1998, I was living in Dubai. I heard rumors the bank was in trouble.
It was a lot of people outside the bank waiting for the bank to open because a local newspaper published a cash flow problem, and I think everyone's scared to lose the money.
The Dubai authorities downplayed the crisis. They called it a little difficulty that did not lead to any financial losses, either in the bank's investments or depositors' accounts. But as I found out, this was far more than a little difficulty. I was first intrigued and soon completely hooked. I had to find out exactly what had happened. The story would eventually take me around the world, but it all started here, in Dubai. One day in August 1995, a man called Futanga Babani Sissoko visited a branch of the Dubai Islamic Bank. He asked to see the manager, Mohammed Ayub. He wanted a loan to buy a car. Ayub agreed, and Sissoko invited him home for dinner. This was the modest beginning of one of the biggest bank frauds ever.
There was a massive fraud committed against Dubai Islamic Bank in the order of $240 million, perpetrated with inside assistance, but organized from non-employees of the bank.
Sissoko came from Mali in West Africa. Over dinner, he made a startling claim. He told Mohammed Ayub he had magic powers.
We heard a lot about that from a few people in his entourage, too. That he had this special, as he called, this special power over people.
Black magic is condemned by Islam as blasphemous. Even so, there's still a widespread belief in it, which Sissoko was about to exploit. He told Ayub to bring some money to his house. Sissoko claimed he could double it, using magic. When Ayub arrived at the house, a man burst out of a room saying a jinn spirit had just attacked him. He warned Ayub not to anger the jinn, for fear his money would not be doubled. So Ayub left his cash in the magic room and waited. He said he saw lights and smoke. He heard the voices of spirits. Then there was silence. Lo and behold, he found the money had indeed doubled. Ayub was now convinced that Sissoko had magic powers. Others were not so sure.
I couldn't figure out whether he was in it, whether he wasn't in it, whether he's in something like it, whether he believed it, whether he didn't believe it, because he just kept talking in circles.
And the story that we were told was that it was a result of some type of hypnosis or something like that.
Sissoko said he had a magical machine that would go on doubling the bank's money, even adding a profit. Ayub swallowed the story.
He believed it was black magic, that Mr. Sissoko could double the money. So he would send money to Mr. Sissoko, the bank's money, and he expected it to come back and double the amount.
I went to see the Dubai police. They'd found a machine that, like Sissoko's, was said to double money. If you put in $100, you get $200 back. Initially, the bills are real. Every year, dozens of people fall prey to this and other unlikely scams. According to the Emirati police, many involve claims of black magic.
في أساليب وطرق احتيالية في السحر الشعوذة عديدة. وأريد أن أضيف أن قسم مكافحة النصب والاحتيال أن موضوع الاحتيال يتشعب إلى 3 فروع. الفرع الأول هو الاحتيال على الأفراد والاحتيال بطريقة السحر والشعوذة والاحتيال على الشركات.
Ayub may have believed the bank's money could be doubled by magic, but he still removed it by fraud. Between 1995 and 1998, he made 183 transfers into Sissoko's accounts around the world. Back then, Alan Fine was an attorney in Miami. When the bank discovered its losses, it asked him to investigate. He began with Ayub's personal finances.
The first thing we looked for were signs that he personally profited from the massive amounts of money that he directed leave the bank. We found completely insignificant amounts of money that he benefited from. The explanation provided by the number 2 person at the bank at the time in Dubai was that he was convinced by black magic. He later believed it was black magic.
I wanted to find out more about Babani Sissoko. The Dubai Islamic Bank may have been his biggest con, but it wasn't his first. He was an intriguing and complex character.
One of the stories he told was that he went to work as a very young man, maybe a boy, clawing for diamonds in the mud on the side of a mountain, and discovered some very big one and smuggled it out, and that's the beginning of his fortune.
Il a toujours été quelqu'un qui allait chercher fortune ailleurs, mais chaque fois qu'il a fait fortune, il est quand même revenu partager avec sa famille.
I heard he couldn't read or write, and I'm talking to him. He seemed very, very wise. And I was saying, well, something here is not right. This guy's a lot smarter than he's leading on to be.
Babani Sissoko was born here, in Mali, in Africa. On the day he was born, it said the whole village burst into flames. Sissoko had no education, but his destiny seemed defined, even from the beginning.
There are several tribes in the area that he came from that have incredible mathematical abilities. Matter of fact, one of the people who is in charge of the space program of the United States comes from Mali, from a little hut in Mali, and he has extraordinary mathematical abilities. So while Sissoko couldn't really speak virtually any, Western language, he had this incredible ability to remember things, dates and times and numbers. And he once told me I was born with an encyclopedia in my head.
This is Bamako, the capital of Mali. Step outside the parliament buildings and you find yourself in the magic market.
When you go into the market area of Bamako, you're going back into the 4th century. And when you walk around and you see how these people live, and you understand the depth of the poverty and the lack of education, the lack of things that we take for granted here, it's a heart-rending thing. And he comes out of that environment, and he was a tribal guy.
I found market traders openly selling dried animal parts. They're used for black magic. But how can the sale of ingredients for magic be tolerated in an Islamic country like Mali? Bamoussa Samite is a sorcerer. He's also known as the Grand Marabout of Douguba, a religious teacher who sees no conflict between a belief in magic and his devout Islamic faith.
Parce que Gina de be mo chamana. Bon, donc ko Gina ko tiche mais réalité de Gina, Gina ko c'est réalité. Bon, c'est ka fado mo la, c'est ka mo sermene, c'est ka mo bali fendola. Mais frado be c'est ka ke Gina be abetene. C'est comme un voulou, chien, li asiri kaso, abe kasado, ate fenkela. Meni mo wala na kabedo.
Bamoussa knows Sissoko personally. He thinks another sorcerer may have helped him, unwittingly.
Sisa, alna soro karamogo fendama. Karamogo we adama, akayere glame peut-être ale tarake femwere ka femwa kono, amadama mika. Obseka kefa.
We still don't know whether Sissoko really believed in magic. But Mohammed Ayoub certainly did. Convinced he was under Sissoko's power, he went on sending him huge amounts of the bank's money. Sissoko's work in Dubai was over. For me, the trail there goes cold. But a few months later, Sissoko surfaces in New York City. In November 1995, he visits a bank, but he does more than just open an account.
He walked into Citibank one day, no appointment, met a teller, and he ended up marrying her. And there's reason to believe she made his relationship with Citibank more comfortable. And he ended up opening an account there through which, from memory, I'm just going to say more than $100 million was wire transferred into the United States.
Citibank was later sued by the Dubai Islamic Bank for its losses. The case was dropped, but it revealed the staggering scale of Sissoko's fraud. According to their legal papers, in excess of $151 million was debited by Citibank from Dubai Islamic Bank's correspondent account without proper authorization. Sissoko paid his new wife more than $500,000 for her help.
I don't know under what legal regime he married her, but he called her a wife, and she believed she was a wife. She understood there were many other wives, some from Africa, some from Miami, some from New York.
With the bank's money rolling in, Sissoko could fulfill his dream of creating an airline for West Africa. He bought a used Hawker-Siddeley 125 and a pair of old Boeing 727s. This was the birth of Air Dabia, named after his village in Mali. But getting it off the ground would not be easy.
Well, he also had an airline that was just notorious for not actually running. Huge maintenance problems. He had these ideas, these sometimes grand ideas, and they just never made any business sense. So he'd put money into them and then abandon them.
Déposer ça sur le tarmac à Abidjan, il s'est couché 1 semaine, 10 jours à l'hôtel. Il aurait pu prendre un vol commercial, même si tu veux, tu prends toute la première classe pour toi seul. Ça coûte pas un jour de vol. Ou bien déplacer un avion pour aller chercher un plat au Sénégal et venir, c'était pas un problème.
I've come to Miami because it was here, at the airport, that things started to go wrong for Sissoko. In July 1996, he tried to buy 2 helicopters dating from the Vietnam War. No one quite knew why.
His explanation for why he wanted them was emergency air ambulance. But the helicopters he was looking at were pretty big helicopters. They were not the kind that you see running back and forth to hospitals and trauma centers in the United States. They're much bigger than that.
The government was concerned that it had something to do with some type of either drug run or some type of military action in his country or neighboring countries.
The Bell helicopters could be refitted as gunships, so they needed a special export license. Sissoko's men tried to speed things up by offering a $30,000 bribe to a customs officer. Instead, they got themselves arrested.
Ouais, c'est une histoire de fou, quoi. Il a le don de se mettre dans des problèmes. Qu'est-ce qu'il a acheté des hélicoptères? Et tout simplement parce qu'il était pressé. Il a voulu soudoyer un douanier, alors qu'il paraît que c'est un crime fédéral. C'est une histoire de fou. Ici, nous, on donne l'argent aux douaniers tous les jours.
Interpol issued a warrant for Sissoko's arrest. He was caught in Geneva, where he'd gone to open another new bank account. Enter Tom Spencer, a lawyer from Miami.
I received a call from a friend of mine who asked me if I would represent him or consider representing him, and that he would like to, that is, Sissoko would like to meet with me in Geneva, in Champ-de-Lune prison. And I talked with the prison warden, who asked me whether or not Sissoko was going to go to the United States. I said, well, you know, we'll see. He said, well, please delay it as long as possible. And I said, well, why? And he said, because he's flying in fantastic meals from Paris every night for us. And that was my first bizarre encounter with Baba Sissoko.
Spencer was appointed the lead counsel in the fight against the bribery charge. In November 1996, the US authorities extradited Sissoko to Miami, where the crime had taken place.
We requested a bail hearing, and the government objected to any bail whatsoever.
The US authorities were investigating Sissoko. They wanted him to remain in custody, but he was mobilizing some influential supporters.
One of the interesting aspects of the bond hearing that we had was the number of diplomats that we had testify, and the judge was absolutely astounded, said so on the record, that he had never had a hearing where he had diplomats from any country come to speak on behalf of a defendant. And we argued that he wasn't a flight risk, that he was prepared to put up a substantial amount of bond.
Next, they demanded a bond of $20 million, a record for a Florida court. Professor H.T. Smith was in the defense team.
I remember when the number was suggested, that I was standing before the judge and Tom leaned over through the interpreter to speak to Sissoko. I assume he asked him, could he make the bond? And I saw his head shaking like, yes. and so we agreed to the bond, and he made the bond. The government was floored.
Sissoko was back on the streets, though still awaiting trial. His display of gratitude astounded the lawyers.
It was one of the most shocking experiences that I or my co-counsel have ever had. I mean, to be there on Brickell Key and to watch this parade of cars come through. There were 3 Mercedes and 3 or 4 Jaguars for counsel. Mine was the first, and I was just stunned.
It came out in the paper that I got a Mercedes, right? So this Catholic priest, who's a very dear friend of mine, saw me at a Miami Heat game. He said, hey, HT, how's the Mercedes doing? So I said back to him, how's your Mercedes? He said, no, he didn't give me a Mercedes. He gave me a Land Rover. I didn't know he had given me anything. I was just joking. No client had ever given me even a bicycle as a bonus for getting him out of jail, let alone a brand new Mercedes-Benz.
But that was just the beginning. Sissoko was about to embark on a massive spending spree.
Miami is a city that responds to wealth. And Sissoko flashed money like nobody else. Just in one jewelry store alone, over $500,000, and multiple hundreds of thousands in other jewelry stores.
He would come in and buy 2, 3, 4 cars at the same time, come back another week and buy 2 or 3, 4 cars at the same time. It was just, the money was like wind.
More than $150,000 in one men's clothing store.
Sissoko was enjoying the high life in Miami, thanks to his control over the manager of the Dubai Islamic Bank. And Mohammed Ayub wasn't funding him just by money transfers.
A lot of the money, I don't know how many millions, but in the millions, was actually never money that was transferred out, but the failure to pay on credit cards, where his credit card debts were just canceled on a monthly basis by the inside person at the bank.
Sissoko had become a Miami celebrity. He already had several wives, but that didn't stop him marrying more.
C'est un vrai playboy. Vous avez trouvé le mot. Parce que là, il est très élégant, il est très beau, et il s'habille avec beaucoup d'élégance. Parce qu'il a flambé à Miami. Il a acheté des appartements partout.
He ultimately rented 23 apartments, and he had a number of his wives in those apartments, and he bought furniture for those apartments.
Sissoko was also giving away large sums to good causes. His trial was approaching, and he knew the value of good publicity.
Moi, je l'ai vu à Miami donner $300,000 à une fanfare, petite fanfare d'une école. Ça, j'étais là.
The band needed money to go to New York for a Thanksgiving Day parade. When Sissoko wrote them the check, they couldn't believe their luck.
One of the parents was actually my mom, and she almost passed out, for seeing a check for that sum of money. But everybody was so gracious. We were just really happy.
I was thinking, oh, is this some modern day Robin Hood? Why would you steal money and give it away? It doesn't make any sense.
He had that, I guess, need to give away money to people, but he did it in a way that was really touching.
He was giving away money like I had never seen before. The Herald did a story after he left, and I think that I don't want to exaggerate, but I think they said they could have chronicled like $14 million he gave away. He was only here 10 months. That's over $1 million a month.
A lot of people did well out of Sissoko, but generosity wasn't his only motive.
He had an absolute need to be admired and worshipped by people.
So much of what he did was for image. And, I mean, to perpetuate a belief that he was a very powerful man and fabulously wealthy, he would give away money. But only, I mean, it was never, to my knowledge, it was never done in a way where he didn't get publicity for it.
Sissoko was also building political support for his case. Some of it came from surprising quarters.
Well, I was impressed by how many people from American politics came out of the woodworks for him. I mean, I think it was just maybe a week into the case, and a former United States Senator Birch Bayh was on my doorstep at my office telling me that he represented Sissoko as well and had been engaged, and that he was going to personally take part in the case. And, to have a former United States Senator of the stature of Birch Bayh, it was stunning to me.
In March 1997, Sissoko's case finally came to court. Defying his lawyer's advice, he pleaded guilty.
Tom and I were totally against him pleading guilty. Basically, they were saying that Sissoko was involved in this criminal enterprise to try to get these helicopters by bribing officials.
But recordings made by U.S. Customs seemed to show that Sissoko's men in Miami had been acting without their boss's approval.
When I went through all of the tapes, one of the tapes, he said something like, hurry up and get them here, but just make sure you don't violate United States law.
Guilty or not, Sissoko took the rap. He may have preferred not to draw attention to his finances. Even his lawyers had no idea where his money was coming from. Sissoko was sentenced to 43 days in prison and a $250,000 fine. Paid, of course, by the Dubai Islamic Bank, though without its knowledge.
Parce qu'à Miami, il était en prison, mais on lui faisait des virements. C'est pourquoi les gens ont dit que c'est normal. Parce que moi, je l'ai entendu demander des virements, et non, et qu'ils sont venus. Donc ça veut dire que c'était très clair. Personne ne pouvait imaginer qu'il y avait une embrouille derrière.
Sissoko was still pouring cash into Air Dabia. It was about to make its boldest purchase yet, a Boeing 747. But this was no ordinary 747. 8 years earlier, in 1989, its cargo door had blown off mid-air.
Good evening. 16 passengers were sucked out of a Boeing 747 20,000 feet above the Pacific when a section of the fuselage was ripped open.
The plane seemed cursed. Incredibly, on its maiden flight for Air Dabia, a 30-foot piece of wing tore off.
L'avion qu'il a pris presque en épave, qu'il a réparé, machin. Mais il y avait un commandant, bon, je ne vais pas citer le nom, mais africain qui était là de lui faire croire que c'est bon.
But Sissoko also used his planes to do good. In Zaire, fighting had broken out and hundreds of Malians were unable to leave.
Il y avait la guerre vers Kinshasa au moment de Babani Sissoko. Il a même envoyé des avions aller prendre les Maliens qui sont là-bas. Il a beaucoup fait pour le Mali.
Quand l'État est obligé de faire recours à l'OMI, aux partenaires pour évacuer les Maliens, mais les Maliens du Zaïre, c'est Baba qui les a évacués seuls.
In Florida, meanwhile, Sissoko was serving time in South Dade Federal Prison. He was offered early release if he made a donation to this homeless shelter, Camilla's House.
He was relieved of the obligation of continuing in prison and put on house arrest for half of his federal criminal sentence after making a contribution to Camilla's House of more than $1 million.
In effect, it seems Sissoko used the Dubai bank's money to buy his way out of prison and out of the United States. Within days, he was on a plane to Mali.
We landed in Bamako. I was stunned. I never expected anything like this, but it was a national holiday. There were hundreds of thousands of people lining the streets at the airport. When we opened up the door to the cockpit, and I patted Sissoko on the back, basically to say, you know, you're home. And he had a bulletproof vest on. And I was stunned.
And Tom wanted to know why you having a bulletproof vest and you didn't give me a bulletproof vest. And that's when he got a little nervous.
This is the police station where Sissoko's house arrest should have been enforced. But as soon as he got to Mali, he disappeared. His lawyer was getting alarmed.
I wanted to get out of there as quickly as I possibly could. I had no bulletproof vest. And then we had a private small jet flight out. I think it was like a 10-seater. And that itself was an interesting experience because at the last minute, the plane had been leaned by the airport because they were seeking some sort of bribery in order for the plane to leave. And I recall as we were taxiing out, I'll never forget this as long as I live, I was throwing CFAs, which was their dollar bills, out the door to the grounds people who were running behind the plane. And we took off and we were cleared to leave. And I said, what a fitting end to a bizarre case.
Sissoko had vanished. He'd got away with a colossal bank heist. But that wasn't quite the end of the story. He was still receiving money from the bank, but the auditors were asking questions. And Mohammed Ayub was getting nervous. Worse, Sissoko had stopped returning his calls. Finally, Ayub panicked. He confessed to a colleague who asked how much was missing. Too ashamed to say, Ayub wrote on a scrap of paper, 890 million dirhams, the equivalent of $242 million. The bank tried desperately to deal with the crisis.
The people who owned the bank took a huge, huge hit. It was not covered by insurance. The bank was saved because the government stepped in to help, but they gave up, a lot of their equity in the bank for that to happen. So, no, there are real victims. Does that mean those people are going to go hungry now because of what he did? No. Not the owners, but they have a different life than they had before.
We asked the Dubai Islamic Bank for an interview to discuss the case, but they declined. Mohammed Ayub was found guilty of fraud and given 3 years in jail. It was rumored he was exorcised for his belief in black magic. Sissoko has never faced justice. In his absence, a Dubai court sentenced him to 3 years for fraud and practicing magic. Interpol issued an arrest warrant, and he remains a wanted man. For me too, there was unfinished business. I was sent transcripts from other trials at which Sissoko failed to appear, including one in Paris. His lawyer claimed he was a scapegoat for Ayub's actions and that the bank's money had gone elsewhere. French courts don't recognize charges of fraud or magic, so Sissoko was found guilty of money laundering. He has never spoken publicly about the bank's missing millions. I decided I had to find him. I took a plane to Bamako, searching for anyone who might know Sissoko. Amongst the bustle and noise, I found his seamstress. She remembered Sissoko fondly.
La dernière fois, même il y a 2 ou 3 ans, je lui ai fait une valise. Lui, s'il ne faisait pas de cadeau, il n'était pas content. C'est son genre. Il aimait beaucoup donner aux gens, surtout les cadeaux.
And this was his driver, Lukal Ibrahim.
Bon, les bonnes choses, vraiment, c'est quelqu'un qui, quand ça va, quand il a quelque chose, il fait plaisir aux gens, il aime arranger, il aime soutenir les gens dans des problèmes. Tu vois, bon, les mauvaises choses que je peux dire un peu sur lui, bon, c'est quelqu'un qui donne toujours l'espoir aux gens, quoi. Tu vois, même si quelque chose qui ne va pas, au lieu de... Il te fait un peu tourner autour de rond. Au lieu de te dire la vérité, il te fait pas chanter comme si ça va. Voilà, c'est des trucs seulement que je n'aime pas trop chez lui.
In 2002, Sissoko became an MP, which gave him political immunity. And Mali has no extradition treaty with any other country. In 2014, Sissoko lost his seat in the assembly, and with it, the protection it gave. The bank in Dubai is still seeking to track down Sissoko. But I'd heard he'd returned to the village of his birth, Dabia. After a long drive, we came across a house fitting the description I'd been given. Suddenly, surrounded by armed guards, there he was, Babani Sissoko. After years of following his story, I had found him, and he agreed to talk to me.
Bon, je m'appelle Sissoko dit Babani. Je suis quelqu'un. Le jour de ma naissance, je l'ai fait après tous les villages. Le jour de ma naissance. Je connais Mayato accouché, tout ça. Elle le fait après le village. Donc, elle a fait sortir. Maman est sortie dehors ici. Ici, tout ça, la bouche, à l'époque. On fait la salle ici, puis le gibier.
So where did he get the money for his expensive projects?
J'ai eu de l'argent. Et maman, j'ai monté, j'ai compté. Moi, je peux dire, j'ai monté. Je peux un petit capital qui peut à 304 millions de dollars.
Did he cheat the Dubai Islamic Bank out of millions of dollars?
Vous avez reçu 242 millions de dollars de la banque?
Madame, je n'ai pas reçu 242 millions. C'est une histoire qui est un peu fou. Il faudra que les messieurs se mettent devant les gens, expliquer d'où passe l'argent. Mais 242 millions de dollars. Écoute, comment cet argent, on peut faire sortir dans une banque? Comment le faire sortir dans une banque? C'est ça le problème. Et que tu fais sortir, et ce monsieur, il n'est pas le seul qui doit ordonner les transmissions de l'argent à la banque. Il faut que ça passe à, quand même, je ne sais pas, une banque, d'un virement bancaire. C'est une seule personne qui le fait. C'est pas une seule personne qui le fait, je pense qu'il y a plusieurs personnes qui doivent faire ça. Alors
oui,
pourquoi?
Il y a la personne, il s'appelle Mohamed Saleh Ayoub. Mohamed Ayoub, Mohamed Saleh, c'est son nom émiratif.
Non, le nom que je connais, c'est Mohamed Ayoub.
Oui, voilà, Mohamed Ayoub, qui était l'assistant directeur de la banque. Et on s'est défendu parce que lui, il est allé en prison pour ce crime.